Okay, guys, we're going to put together our podcast that we started working on Thursday in class. Everything you see here, we've already walked through in class. Saw a lot of you taking notes on this, but as you guys start putting together your podcast, I want you to have something that you can refer to and walk back through everything we did. Just in case you get stuck on something, you should be able to figure it out just watching this video. So, the two files you're going to be working with when you're doing your podcast, one of them is going to be your pre-recorded interview with a sports figure it's going to make up the body of your podcast. But then there's going to be two that you're going to be recording new that's going to be the intro to your podcast and your outro that you're going to need to edit in on each end. So I'm going to walk you back through how you record that, how you set up your podcast, and then how you import your pre-recorded audio to use for your body. So when you're getting started, you're going to want to just click here to create a new file. You need to create a new multi-track session. And when you set this up, this is going to show you this is where you're going to do most of your work. This is your different tracks. That's where you're going to assemble your timeline for your podcast. Now, if you need to record your intro or outro, you can do it one of two ways. You can do it on an external recording device like your phone, or if you have a handheld recorder, you can use that too. Or you can record it directly in Audition here. And keep in mind, as I mentioned in class on Thursday, I'm using an older version of Audition on this Mac. It's a little bit older Mac, and so it can't run the newer version you guys downloaded, the Adobe Creative Cloud version. But I believe the Creative Cloud version, I think the only changes are with some of the advanced features. I don't think it's going to change anything that you guys run into building your podcast. But if you run into something where it looks different, just reach out to me and we'll figure it out. So if you need to record in Audition, just create a new audio file, and you're going to get a screen that looks like this. Just go down here, hit record, and start recording your session, and then it'll appear up here in your files once you're done. As you can see, Untitled 7, there's the file that I just created. I already have all the files that I need, however, because we did this in class the other day. So I just need to import all of these files and pull them in. And now I can start building my podcast. So when I want to work on my podcast, I'm going to need to tap on my multi-track section up here. And the first thing that I'm going to start doing is I downloaded some intro music. And as I mentioned in class, please don't just go grab any music that's out there off of an MP3 or something. Most of it is going to be copyrighted. Go to that free audio archive that is hyperlinked on the blog and that I mentioned in class. It's the best place to go, or places like that to go to get free music that you can use for your podcast. And you can find all kinds of things in there that'll work really well for intro music. So I downloaded this when we were in class on Thursday. I'm going to use that again. And again, the two things you need to record are your intro and your outro. So I have my intro here. And I'm probably going to want to let about 6 seconds or so of music play before I start speaking. And you can see here, this line is really flat. I wasn't talking at the beginning of this podcast. So there are two ways you can edit tracks. You can either grab the end here until you see this red bracket show up, and then you can drag it over and cut off some of that dead air time. Or the other thing you can do is use the razor tool up here. Now the razor tool, what that's going to do, it's not going to delete anything. It's going to split your track so that you go from having one file you're working with on the timeline to two. And that can be really advantageous. And when you split the tracks though, you can still adjust them. So I'm going to split this one right here and grab my pointer tool. But if I didn't split it just perfectly, I can still grab it here and still pull it out and still use all of that material. I'm not losing anything. So I'm going to let a little bit of overlap go here, because what I want to do is I want to have my music go from playing really loud to fading out right as I'm starting to talk. So I'm going to do that. I need to split the file, use my razor tool to create another file, grab my pointer, highlight that new file that I want the fade out in, and I'm going to go up to Clip, Fade Out, just like that. And now once I get this faded out, I have another option, this diamond right here. I can adjust how that fade out looks by dragging that down or pulling that up. I can move it in and out to have it fade at different points within this clip. But I definitely want mine to start at the beginning of, I've set it where I want it to start, and I want it to fade out fairly quickly because as I'm talking. So now that I've got that set, you can hear how this is going to fade out as I start talking. And then actually I might want to move that down a little bit so that I'm, there we go. Now it fades out just as I'm starting to talk. And you can play with that, move that around, play around with the fade feature so that it sounds different as you're coming in. One thing with this track is I'm not speaking very loud. The microphone didn't pick us up very well. So I'm going to click on this here. This is going to increase the volume. I'm going to bump that up to about +9. And I think that's about as high as, or we can go +15. And that'll make us sound a little bit louder to match the music.
Welcome to the J541 podcast.
That's definitely better. So anything on this track now is going to play at +15. So I'm going to keep only the pieces that we recorded in class up here on this track, so it's playing at that sound level. Everything here with the intro music is going to stay down here in track 2 so that it's playing at a lower level. And if I wanted to, I could even turn that down a little bit. Now I'm going to drag this out here, so I drag this down the timeline so I have it to use later on. Now the next thing I'm going to need to do is introduce our first interview, which was Justin. I'm going to drag Justin out here on the timeline. But when you're going from 2 different speaking tracks, it can be a little abrupt when you're going from one speaking track to another. Sometimes they don't sound exactly the same if you record them on 2 different devices, such as if you do your pre-recorded interview on a handheld recorder, but you record your intro from within Audition here, they might sound different. It might be jarring to the reader. It might just sound really awkward. So what I like to do, give yourself a little bit of music in between to help provide a little bit of a transition to that new clip. That is going to just provide your listener's ear with a little bit of a break, and if there's any differences between the soundtracks, it's going to become less noticeable. So drop your music in here, split the track again, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to do a fade in and a fade out. So select that, go to fade in, right toward the end of this track, and again you can play with how that's going to fade in. Go over here, have that fade back out as the person starts talking again. And again, you can play with that to see how that's going to sound, but this should make it give us a little bit more of a break in between clips here, so it isn't so jarring going from one interview to the next.
Just like we've gotten too excited in the past. So let's start off the conversation with Justin. Justin's never done an art.
All right, we've got Justin's interview in here now. Now, because we're such a well-supported podcast, I recorded a commercial in class to be able to include in this podcast. So I need to add that in before the next speaker starts. So I need to drop my commercial up here on the timeline. And just like before, I want to be able to have a little bit of a transition here. So I'm going to split this music up again. And give myself another transition. Now, actually, I am not going to do it that way. I'm going to save myself a little bit of time. I've already got a transition here. So I can go Control C and Control V, just like you would copying and pasting on a Word document, and get the exact same transition with the fade in and fade out already set. so that I don't have to go and redo it all over again. This will save you a few seconds anyway, but at least it's more convenience than I like to use it for.
Next, but first the word from our general next, but first the word. You got trouble getting stains out of your laundry? I don't, so I'm not going to send you to this site.
Alright, there's my stupid commercial. Now I need to drag this further down here. Now, I have my interview with Robbie to finish this off. So let's go ahead and grab Robbie's interview here. And again, I can do the same thing as I did there. Copy and paste these. Go ahead and just like before, there's a little bit of dead air here, so I'm going to cut off a little bit of that, cover that up. Let's see how that sounds.
Check out something that doesn't exist. So Robbie, we've heard from Justin. He thinks that luck.
Now I've got Justin's interview in there. Now all I got to do is just close out this podcast. So I'm going to drag this down. Set this at the end here. I'm going to let this go a little ways here. Now, one thing to note with this, you're never, as I said before, when you're using the razor tool, you're never deleting anything you have, any of your music. You still have this entire clip to work with. So if you cut this up a bunch of times and you feel like you're cutting this and you're running out of clip, you still got the whole clip to work with. So don't feel like you have to import it again or that you only have a certain amount of music to work with. You've got the whole thing at your disposal. So we're going to let this thing run for about 10 seconds. So we're at about, up here we're at about 3 minutes and 39 seconds. We're going to run this out for about 3 minutes 49 seconds, right about here. And I need to do a fade out. So get your razor tool, or fade in on this one. Get your razor tool, clip that. And set it to fade in. And if you want to adjust that, drag these out, give yourself a little more space, and slide this around in here to whatever is going to work well. So, being that this is the end, I'm probably going to want this to come in pretty quickly. So just connect these two.
Tuning in and come see us again.
And maybe just at the end here, we're going to make a fade out just to make this feel a little more polished. Oops. There we go.
Come see us again.
So that's all there is to it, putting it together. Now once you need to go export it, go up to File, go to Export, Multi-Track Mixdown. You're going to make a multi-track mixdown of the entire session. Select your file name up here. Save it to your folders, make it an MP3 audio file, and hit OK. And audio files will save pretty quickly. Video type files take a little bit longer, but this should save pretty quickly. So once you've done that, you should be ready to upload that to SoundCloud, and you can import it in your blog. So if you run into any trouble, just shoot me an email, let me know. Otherwise, Enjoy it, have fun with this project, and I'll see you on Thursday.